Welcome to Mallett and Michelle on Dripping Springs, hosted by me, Michelle Lewis, and Steve Mallett.
Well, hey there, Michelle.
Hello there, Steve Mallett.
How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful.
Our guest today, man, I'm super excited about this. Coach Kane from the Dripping Springs High School women's volleyball team.
The winningest coach in Dripping Springs.
Yep. He recently passed Poe Shelton as the winningest coach at Dripping Springs.
That's quite a feat. And he's probably one of the winningest coaches in Texas.
I believe that's true. Yeah. He's won 6 state championships in women's volleyball.
Transformed the game of volleyball for Dripping Springs. Let's show those girls some love.
Yes.
They have won. Well, I don't know if they have won 6 championships.
No,
he has won.
Coach has won 6.
He has won 6. I think he's won 4.
I actually don't know how many he's won here.
But, we need to show some love to those girls.
We're going to talk about respect for women's sports when he comes in. But did you know that Title IX, which really opened up sports for women, was signed in 1972?
Wow.
That's 40-something years.
Well, have times changed most recently?
Yeah.
Huh. What exactly does Title IX do?
Title IX was signed by Richard Nixon in 1972. It was legislation that forbid discrimination on the use of federal funds because of gender. So you couldn't, federal funds going to schools, you couldn't discriminate and not give that money to girls just because they were girls. So in 1972, there were 300,000 women competing in college sports. And a lot of the sports that we have now didn't even have, women weren't in those sports.
Yeah.
Now, 3 million women are in college sports. Wow. I don't know what percentage that is, but it's a lot. And 44% of all NCAA athletes are women now. And that was minuscule back then.
Because we rock.
That's right. Yep. And before Title IX, most high schools and colleges had no money, no budgets for women's sports.
Really?
Yeah. And, we don't talk about it that much, but women's sports are very exciting. Look at, women's tennis, women's volleyball, women's soccer is really interesting. Now women's cycling is taking off. It's very fun to watch.
I think it's very important to protect women in sports nowadays. I think the current climate is to just not recognize and not support the hard work that these women, biological women, do in their craft. And I'm all
That's the funny thing is there's probably not as there's not as much money in women's sports as there is in men's sports, but those women work just as hard as any male athlete out there.
I agree. Well, to piggyback on that, I wanted to know, Steve, did you know in my Weird True Facts?
Weird True Facts.
It makes me laugh when you say that. I don't know why. We need to create a little
like a jingle.
A sound bite.
Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Weird True Facts.
No, we're not doing that. How many professional sports do you think are here in Texas? Professional
sports?
Yes.
Like have professional teams?
Yes. Just throw a number out there.
7.
7. I was surprised to learn that there are 14.
Really?
Yeah, there's 12 men's and 2 women's.
Name them.
Okay, football.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, help me here. Football.
Baseball.
No, name this team in football.
The professional team. Yeah, Cowboys.
Okay. Who else?
Texans.
The Texans. And what was before the Texans?
Oilers.
The Oilers, but they're now the...
Titans.
Oh, good job.
Man, I did it.
Good job. Okay.
I did it.
Baseball.
I suck at baseball. I haven't watched baseball in 30 years.
Cedric's going to be so disappointed. The Astros.
Houston Astros.
And the Texas Rangers.
Yes. Okay.
There's
4.
4. Basketball.
San Antonio, the Spurs. And the Mavericks.
Okay.
Oh, there's another one.
Houston.
Yeah. What are they?
The Rockets.
The Rockets, yes.
Okay. And there's also the Dallas Wings, which is the WNBA.
Okay. So that's 8.
8. Ooh, here's a good one. Soccer.
The Austin
FC.
FC.
The Dallas FC.
I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, it's called the Dallas or FC Dallas, and then there's the
There's
Houston
a San
Dash.
Antonio team too.
Well, they're not professional,
Oh,
so it's the
okay.
Houston Dash and then the Houston Dynamo.
Okay.
So there's 4, which I was really surprised. Ice hockey.
Okay, so I think we're up to 12. So what are the teams for ice hockey?
Dallas Stars.
Okay.
The professional. And then this one surprised me most of all. Ready? What sport would you never think?
I'm picking my brain now.
Okay, but you lived in this country and it was popular in this country.
Bullfighting.
Okay, not bullfighting.
No.
Cricket.
There's a professional cricket team in Texas?
It just started this year. It's the Texas Super Kings.
Oh, I
Isn't
thought
that
you were
funny?
going to say Kidditch.
Oh,
Remember we talked about Kidditch in the previous episode? There was a professional Kidditch team in Austin.
The Texas Super Kings, which I think is really, it's out of Dallas. And so cricket.
That's cool. Yeah, I was reading a story last week that Rick Perry signed a bill in 2011 that made football the official sport of Texas.
Oh.
Yeah, which doesn't surprise you, does it?
No, it doesn't. I'm a big football fan. For a couple of years, I only watched college ball, but I do, in Thanksgiving this year, we went to a Dallas game. And I'm traditionally saying I'm a fair weather Dallas fan. Let's just be honest.
As soon as they start winning, then you're going to go. Yeah.
I get Tourette syndrome when I watch that game. Both Todd and I do, and we let it affect our day. But yeah, I'm people that choose to use their bodies in those ways. It is something to be. I don't know. I mean, like a lot of people are using their brains. These people are using their bodies. Oh, I mean, their brains too, but to make a living. And there are long-term consequences along with.
Well,
doing
there's that, but they're driven by the desire to be the very best at what they do, the best in the world.
So you think they're adrenaline junkies also? Probably.
I think there's some adrenaline, but I think it's there is some people have a need and a desire to reach the top of the top of the top.
Well,
and, like there's Elon Musk is the business guy for that. And, I'm trying to think of a professional.
Steve Mallett in real estate.
Yeah, that's right. Steve Mallett in real estate. I was trying to think of a football player, that's I'm dating myself, but Joe Montana of sports, the
is he still
the
alive?
Best of the best.
Is he still alive?
Yeah. Joe, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I've always admired professional athletes, and I think there is a little bit of a misunderstanding now, I think, from some people that a lot of the athletes are lucky that they got to be professional athletes, and I can tell you there's not one single professional athlete out there that has not worked their ass off to be where they're at. You don't get to be the top of the top of the top without lots and with years and years and years of hard work and dedication and perseverance to be at that top of the game.
There is, on the flip side of that, there is such a small percentage of high school kids that go on to be collegiate athletes, professional athletes. And I think there is so much pressure nowadays, these leagues and these club sports where, I mean, I get it. You're honing your craft, but I mean, when you're just consistently go, and these kids aren't even allowed to just kind of be kids sometimes.
Yeah. Kids that probably, the funny thing is kids that probably don't have the talent for the sport that their parents picked for them are still being pushed to that extreme. And the funny thing is, like maybe there's a kid that his dad wants him to be a college baseball player, and that kid is not that great. He'll never go play ball in college, but he might be a hell of a 800-meter runner on the track, or there's some other sport that he or she could excel in, but the parents push them to that to be something that the parents want to do.
Well, I know by just looking at me, you don't realize how athletic I am.
You are so athletic, Michelle. You tripped in the hall and fell down and put a dent in the wall.
Thanks. Yes, I did.
Yes,
You're welcome.
yeah.
You're welcome. Well, on that note, let's get Coach Kane
I'm
here.
really excited. We've got some great questions for him, and he's going to talk to us about all these state championships and his coaching philosophies, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Be right back.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Mallett Integrity Team of real estate professionals. They are based in Dripping Springs and bring you over 45 years of combined experience helping people reach their hill country real estate dreams. When you want the best in town, call them at 512-829-2062 or look them up at mallettintegrityteam.com. And now, here's Steve and Michelle.
Welcome back. We are at episode 66.
66.
With Coach Michael Kane. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
Welcome
for having
to the
me.
show. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me out.
Yeah, it's exciting. We want to talk about your 6 state championships and your volleyball career, I guess, coaching. And
Yeah.
I know I had to shut you guys up because y'all were talking too much before we started recording.
We've already found
I'm
some
never
common
short
ground.
on talking. Everybody says if at a banquet I'm less than 30 minutes, that's a miracle of life.
I know. It's like, stop. No, that's good stuff. That's good
good
stuff. Because,
stuff.
we know you as Coach Kane here in Dripping Springs. You're kind of a living legend here, and I know you're very humble about yourself. But you said something right before we started recording that you were in the Air Force, and that's something I did not even know that
didn't
you're
know that
prior
either.
military.
I am.
And didn't you say something you were born in Spain?
So I was a military brat as well. So growing up, I was born in Madrid. I had a very random life as a child, and I think it probably creates who you are, right? Getting to learn and meet as a military brat, as you know.
Yeah.
Every 3 years you're moving. There wasn't cell phones, and so there was no I can Snapchat or FaceTime my friend. It was you would have to write someone if you wanted to keep
Actually,
in contact.
a letter.
A letter.
Yeah.
So I know kids don't understand what that really is these days, but so every 3 years I'm having to recreate friendships and build relationships and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of contributed to who I am as the dynamics of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Never short on words, right? But everything I did was extreme as far as where I lived. So I was born in Madrid. Then I made the wonderful move to Altus, Oklahoma.
Oh,
geez.
the thriving
Look,
metropolis.
the thriving
How old were
metropolis.
you when you left Spain?
5.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know English. All I knew was Spanish.
Wow.
Castilian Spanish.
Yeah.
Then I dropped all that and picked up English, obviously. Then we moved to Reykjavik, Iceland.
Oh, shit.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Wow.
Then I lived there for 2 years. And then we went the extreme to move out to the island of Crete in Greece. And I lived there for 3 years.
Wow. How old were you at that?
That was 5th, 6th grade-ish.
So
4th,
were you
5th,
going to
6th.
school on a base there?
I was.
Okay.
Mhm. The interesting part was if we'd stayed a little bit longer with them, they had all the way up until middle school, I believe, or high school. I don't remember if it was middle school or high school. But if you were there, if your parents were stationed there at that level, you would be shipped off to like Germany, like Europe, to go to high school because I didn't have the capacity at that time.
Really? That
to have
sounds
high
like a
school.
small base.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I went from Crete to the thriving place of Lubbock, Texas, and then my dad retired and we moved to Austin and then, the rest is there. And then I went into the military after high school, about a year after I realized that I needed a little bit of direction. And,
Where'd you graduate from high school?
Bowie High School. First,
Oh, really?
yeah.
The
first
class?
graduating class, 1989. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I'm an 89 girl,
Yeah,
too.
so
Look
there
at
you go.
that.
Well,
I'm
so
Carroll
it's-
High School,
yeah.
though.
Oh, you're where, Gerald?
Carroll.
Oh, Carroll.
Carroll High School.
In Dallas?
In Corpus.
Oh, Corpus. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that, at that time, again, completely different atmosphere. In Austin, they used to bus kids. So I lived in South Austin, and we used to get bused all the way to the east side. And there was a high school named Johnston High School. It doesn't exist anymore. And our senior year, they opened up Bowie. And so they said, hey, you have an opportunity to graduate from Johnston since you've been there for 3 years. The seniors were the only one that had the option. And the city just stopped busing kids. They were trying to kind of integrate different cultures and stuff like that.
So that was 88, 89?
89 was the
89,
graduate. So it's when Bowie opened up. And I was like, drive 45 minutes to school or 3 minutes to school. I think I'll just go to.
Yeah.
Did you play sports in high school?
Not in high school, so not proudly, but I wasn't as focused and on where I needed to be focused.
Yeah.
For my parents to enable me. So
They didn't have a Coach Kane back then.
They did not. Matter of fact, my parents instilled the no pass, no play policy. So,
Beat your ass if
but
you don't
yeah, something like that. And for me, my parents, wouldn't allow that, and they instilled the importance of that. So, I never played for a school. And I share that with my kids all the time because I think it's a blessing and a privilege to have done so. And but I played select baseball, and baseball was probably my thing probably could have pursued that if I would have been disciplined. I mean, I was on select teams and all the things, and
as much as 1989 allowed, right?
allowed, it was a little bit different.
It's
for
so
sure.
different if you think about, like, I mean, being a coach now and kind of being engulfed in that community, in that world. It's so funny to me how a lot of these sports aren't really allowing these kids to play the game. It's about the money and the business behind the game, even at such a young age.
For sure.
The end goal, not the play and enjoying the play. It's
correct.
Okay, we're going to get into college, or we're going.
But there's such a small percentage of kids, right, that actually go collegiate.
Yeah,
right?
and that's something. We have signings like, Coach Z, who's our athletic director at the high school. He kind of referenced a statement that I typically make every year at signings, and the truth is, and I speak more so on the volleyball side, but I think it's pretty standard across the industry as far as all sports. But about 3 to 5% of kids that are playing sports in high school will go on to the next level at some level, meaning D3, D2, JUCO, all combined. 3 to 5%. 1% will play Division I. And it's rare. Now, in the volleyball world here in Dripping, we're probably about 35%.
Wow.
It's a pretty silly number.
You're turning out some elite athletes.
I don't know about I'm doing it, but they're there.
Well, yeah. Dripping Springs is turning out some elite athletes.
Dripping Springs is not short of elite athletes.
Piggybacking on that, being one of the winningest coaches in Dripping Springs history, and kind of being up there in one of Texas' greatest volleyball coaches, and I know you're humble, but I'm gonna just say it.
I appreciate
What do you think sets you apart from other coaches? I mean, in other words, like, what makes you win so much?
Well, first off, you have to have kids that buy into you as a person, number one. I think kids feed off of the investment that I have. Obviously, and again, it's really hard for me to talk about that kind of stuff because I don't want to sound arrogant, right? Because there's a lot of great coaches. And this year specifically was probably one of my favorite years. Not to say this team is my favorite over last year's team or the 15 team that won it, but just in the sense that it's really come full circle for me to recognize and be more cognizant of how blessed I am. And I use that word a lot, and kids make fun of me all the time for saying that word. But there are so many, and I was approached a lot by so many coaches this year specifically, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because we moved into 6A, and people are like, oh, well, now it's 6A, it's going to be really tough. And then we win it. They're like, how did you just do that? I'm like,
you rose to the challenge.
But there were so many coaches that are great coaches. They're just not at Dripping Springs, America, right? Like, in order to win a state championship, you have to have a multitude of things. And I recognize these things, and I never take them for granted. Number one, you got to have some athletes, right? As we were talking a little bit about before, we have athletes for sure. You have to have a culture that is created by the coach and the players that buy in and establish, like, this is what it takes to be successful on a day in and day out basis. And we've established that here. And so it's kind of like this train that's moving forward, right? You also have to have, truthfully, a little bit of luck. I mean,
that's honesty right there.
No, for sure. If you're not, I mean, here's an example. People asked me this year, like, what do you think about this team? And we had lost 12 games or something, or 13 games at the time, and 12 before we started the playoffs. And they go, what are your chances? What do you think? Because we were projected to be really successful. Then we took some losses, but I started 2 freshmen and 2 sophomores, and we had a great medley of kids, and it was a process. And they said, what are your chances? I was like, look, we could get bounced in the first round, or we could win this whole thing. It's just, you never know with this group. And so sure enough, we lose a warm-up game for the playoffs to the number 1 ranked team, Highland Park. It was a really good game, 2 incredible teams. And so we took away from that. All right, this is what the best looks like. We got to turn up the gas a little bit. Well, in the first round, we're playing Vandegrift, and we lose the first 2 sets. And I don't know your knowledge about volleyball, but it's 3 out of 5.
Okay.
We lose the first 2. The games are to 25. In the third set, we're down 21-24. So we're 1 point away from being eliminated for the season to be over. And we go on this 5-point run to win that set, and then we win the next 2. Reverse sweep, and then we win the state championship. So,
wow.
I mean, 21-24 is a little bit less.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because you mentioned you established this culture of winning. How do you do that? So you start the season. What do you do? What's the first thing you do to start establishing this culture?
I talk a lot to a lot of coaches about this because this is what people want to know, right? And I'm very fortunate, and people remind me a lot, and I'm aware of it, that I can come in and say something, and because my reputation or my career enables me to say something and people buy into it. If you're not as successful, sometimes people want to push back if there's change. And when I came to dripping, I'd already had 4 state championships. I'd taken Hayes to the regional finals. I mean, I was a known commodity, if that makes any sense. And so when I come in and say, okay, this coach before me was doing this, we're scrapping all of that, this is what we're doing. There wasn't a lot of tremendous pushback. Unfortunately, for most coaches and a lot of coaches in our industry, you come in with an idea. If you don't have the credentials, so to speak, it's a little bit harder for people to buy in. And so I felt like the minute I got on campus at Dripping, I had players that knew me from club or competed against me, and they were very, respectful of my accolades and my knowledge. And so they bought in immediately. You pull in the seniors and say, this is your show. This isn't Michael Kane. We are going to establish a culture. So one of the things I do a lot is I put a lot of ownership on the girls, and this is your program. And let's decide what we want. Because it doesn't matter what Michael Kane wants. If you could care less whether we win a state championship or we're successful, it doesn't really matter. So communicating with them about setting goals and giving them ownership of they're not telling me how to practice. They're not telling me what drills to run. They're not telling me what lineup to run. But it's absolutely, let's talk about and then let's talk about real life and what that looks like. So if you want this, it requires A, B, C, and D. But if you're not willing to give A, B, C, and D, please don't mention state championships.
Winning the state championship takes a lot of
not even in the cards. It's just so many things that come to it.
And there's personal sacrifices
those
girls have to give up too.
100%.
Social life. There's
100%.
I mean, there's sometimes that dances or other things that are popping up.
Senior walks. I mean, Dripping Springs, the senior walk is a big thing. And I try my best to make sure we navigate and very aware of the life of these kids, right? I know on Friday nights we're playing volleyball. We're not at a football game with the rest of the student body. So I try to work as best I can with those and do little tweaks and this, that, and the other. But that was something that I did. I come in, I give the ownership to the seniors. I had immediate buy-in. And then we just, every year, we pass that on to the next group. I've sat down with, currently right now, the juniors, who now I call them seniors, and they're like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, now it's your program. Yeah. So now let's talk about the challenge to say the seniors that we had this year, Mackenzie and Natalie and Taylor and all those kids, they're great kids, amazing kids. And yet I still challenge these juniors who will be the seniors to be even better. So I say critique them. They were amazing kids. They set the standard. They passed the torch. But how are you going to make it better? And we talk about giving them opportunities to do that. And I think the kids buy into it. I mean, they love it. It's something that they genuinely look forward to. I mean, they get to pick the uniforms, which is, I mean, I don't wear the uniforms. People are like, you're letting the kids decide the uniform? I'm like, absolutely.
They got to wear it.
But I want them to be, hey, this is us. Yes. This is our year. And so there's little things like that I think help.
Especially after spring break, those seniors have senioritis bad.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But these kids are working, and they don't. We have the hardest working kids. It's impressive, and it just is. We've been lucky. We've got the train moving, and now one of the funniest stories. And this is again, or two quick ones, real quick. Sorry, I get long winded.
No, you're good.
But our softball coach a couple years back was. And they're very successful. They have another great year as well. Wade Womack is one of the best coaches in the state for sure. And but he was helping out because Paige was pregnant, so she couldn't ride on the bus. So here we are, we're going to state, and but we do this little tour around Dripping on our way to state. And so Paige didn't want to miss out on that. So she was behind the truck with Wade, but then when we were going to do the tour, he got on let her on the bus, and we did this tour, and then afterwards he goes, no wonder everybody wants to play volleyball. Like, this was amazing.
It's like a rock star.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're treated like royalty, and it's really cool.
Well,
and
you
so
guys are. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, what's funny is this year, like I said, there was 2 girls on the team who had siblings that played for me that had gone to the state tournament. And so there's photographs of them little kids holding, it was them when they were little, holding signs to say, good luck Tigers. And now they're on the bus.
It's their turn now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this rite of passage. And again, we've been very, very fortunate to continue that success, but it's kind of steamrolled and built itself.
Yeah. I want to go back to that scenario you were talking about. You were down 2 games. You were in that third game, and it was 21-24, and you were almost out of that tournament. What did you say to the girls on the sideline to get them to pull themselves out of that?
I was a little busy. I was on Expedia deciding where I was going to go on vacation because the season was about to... I'm just kidding. No, honestly, I get asked all the time, like, what do you do in playoffs? Like, what are your practices look like? Do you ramp it up?
That's crunch time, though.
Yeah, for sure. But
you had to turn that around.
It leads to that. And one of the things that we've done, we've done over the last, how many years I've been coaching, too many. We put ourselves, I've found ourselves in different scenarios. And so we have like this scripted scenario sequence that I put the girls through almost daily during practice, meaning I put them in scenarios. And again, I communicate the investment that's required to make this sequence be successful. And that is everybody's got to be trying to stop each other. So the scout side or the starting side, we're trying to not let them score. We're trying to score. It's a real environment. And they really do take it as such. And we put them in all these scenarios. And it's, hey, the game's tied 23-23. We got to close it out. Hey, we're up 22-20. You got to finish out. Hey, we're down 24-21. We're down 20-24. So I put them in all these different scenarios. So truthfully, we reminded them about this is what we talk about every day. There's nothing that we haven't seen in practice. I mean, I know it's not a game, but for them during those practices, they really compete. I mean, it's a pretty cool thing to watch these kids go through the sequence during the playoffs because it is serious for them. These kids are working. And so I just reminded them a little bit about this is what we practice. And, it starts with the little details, making sure first get your serve in, obviously, which sounds silly enough, but you can't afford to miss because if you miss, the season's over.
How unusual is that? Because I didn't play sport. I ran track. I mean, was there sweating involved? Because I didn't do it.
No, you did 100 meters.
Yeah, 100 meters. But you don't even necessarily talk about the mechanics of the game as much as you do the scenarios or the relationships.
The mental aspect. That's what I was going to say. So when you're putting them in those sort of pressure situations, you're preparing them to experience it so that they can rise to the occasion.
Right. And there's not technical training that's done earlier on in the off season. We're working on stuff in the practices. But when you get to, and this is what coaches always kind of are in shock a little bit when they speak to me because they think once you start, and there is a contingent of people out there, and I tell them they're silly and that they're just really thinking it, and not that I'm perfect and that I'm smart, but when you get to the playoffs, it doesn't mean you practice 2 hours. Now you got to go 2.5 hours, or, you were working hard. Now we got to really work. I'm like, if you're working hard, you're working hard. I don't know that way you got to work any harder. Yeah. Like they should always be working as hard as you need to work, not decide, okay, now it's important. If you treat, and I know there's an old cliche of, practice how you play, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is your mindset should never be different. When you show up to compete in a practice or day one of the season, my coaching mindset is I'm trying to win. I don't care who it is. I don't say, oh my gosh, it's Lake Travis. I want to beat them more than I want to beat Bowie, or it's Westlake. We really got to get serious. I want to beat Aikens as bad as I want to beat them. Yeah. There's no difference for me. I know that sounds crazy, but my mindset is the state championship is just as important as the first game of the year for me.
You can't get to the state championship.
Well, you can't.
If you don't win
and
the
I know that
games.
sounds crazy. I'm a competitor. I'm probably the most competitive person most people meet. I don't care what I'm doing. I want to beat you. If I'm playing pickup basketball in a PE class with a kid, I'm going to take him out because I'm trying to beat him. Like, if we're keeping score, you're not going to say you beat me at something.
I think you just answered my next question there, which I was going to ask you is like, who are you harder on when you lose, yourself or the players? Well, you just answered it.
For sure. I mean, kids, people don't realize I always laugh when parents will say, and the other, I'm sure they do it to me too. I can't imagine, but I'm kidding. But when they say, oh my God, I can't believe he did that, or that coach did this and this is why we lost. There's not a coach in the planet, in any environment, in any sport, at any level that is making a coaching decision, whether it be a substitution or a play call, that is trying not to win.
Yeah.
That this doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And to suggest that is really ignorant on anybody's part. So I want to win all the time. There's nothing, I want them to be as successful. And it doesn't define you. Just like I try to tell kids, winning a state championship, it's monumental. It's the third state championship in Dripping Springs history. The second for me at Dripping Springs. The banners in the gym hanging, their pictures on the wall. Cool. Those things will never come down.
Yeah.
That is awesome. But I remind them, never let that be the most pivotal, monumental moment of your life.
It's a building block.
It's a building block, or it's just a moment. Because when you get married and you have children, and there will be moments that should trump that in spades. And not to say it's not amazing, but it better not be the most amazing moment of your life.
Yeah.
And because that's not where you stop, right? It's a moment. It helps define who you are. It will create open doors, create opportunities later on down the road, but it's definitely not what defines you as a person.
I think though,
because if you do that, then if you lose, does that define you?
No, yeah, I know. But the skills that they learn from somebody like you and being in those environments help them every step of their life. I mean, every day it's going to help them.
Sure.
Pushing through tough circumstances.
Sure.
You're down 2 games at 21-24. That's a tough circumstance. And so when they have a challenge at work and they're in their 30s, that helps them.
For sure. And sometimes the truth of the matter is I would love to say that everybody that's played for Michael Caine just thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And the reality is there's kids that don't have a great experience. And it hurts because I love them all and I want them to be nothing but the best that they could be. But sometimes it's later on in life that they realize, man, I now get that.
Yeah.
I've had multiple times where kids have sent me a letter or had a conversation with me and said, man, in high school, I was not digging you too much. And then I realized, oh my God, this guy held me accountable. He taught me about, perseverance. You taught me all these things. And I didn't know that was because I was young. And now I realize what you were doing. I've got one right now that I probably won't say her name, but it was kind of funny. She was a starter. She played. So this wasn't a kid that's not playing that's disgruntled because they didn't play. This is a kid that played. And, I knew she struggled with me because again, I'm hard. I don't mince words when I hold you accountable. I put your feet to the fire. I try to teach you right from wrong. I try to be fair in the sense that I treat you fairly because playing time is never fair to anybody. And so this young lady struggled a little bit. And then she went on to play in college, and I got a text from the mom. And she said, I realize now that I really wish I had Coach Caine because this college coach is not what I built this up to be. And now I realize that this person was really pushing me to a level I didn't realize. It was a really cool text. And now this young lady is back in Austin and working with me in the club environment.
That's cool.
So it's kind of a full circle thing for me, because she did not like Coach Caine in her senior year.
When a player's out on the court, it's court, right?
It's a court.
Volleyball court.
Yeah.
I was saying it and I was like, that didn't sound right. And they make a mistake and they come off the court and you're the words you're using are you're hard on them. But what kind of conversation are you having with them when they've made a mistake and they're coming off?
I mean, hard is based on what people's perception of hard is, right? For me, I'm not hard. I'm hold you accountable, and I'm gonna not allow you to say. I'm not gonna say, hey, that's a great job of shanking the pass. That's not in my DNA. I'm going to sit there and say, hey, your angle wasn't right. You weren't this. I need you to be more focused. And I'll say that. I try not to. And I'm not gonna say I've never done it because I don't record myself. I probably should. But I've never said like, hey, Kaylee, you cost us the game.
Oh, no.
I would never do that, right?
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't say, Kaylee, you are killing the team right now. I don't believe I've ever done that. Well, I say, Kaylee, you've got to start passing the ball. We've got to start getting that angle out early. I don't even think I do that very much. I typically do a lot of, hey, we have to do this. We have to get our passes right. We have to do this, X, Y, and Z. As far as when kids come off the court, a lot of times it's mechanical stuff. Hey, you're dropping your elbow. You're not closing your block. You're not whatever. It might be something technical. Sometimes I do it on the court, and it looks as if I'm yelling and I remind people all the time.
Parents.
Right. Yeah. Well, even kids. I have a lot of conversation with kids about it because if you're playing for me for the first time, I'll I just had this conversation yesterday with my 12s. So I coach club volleyball at Awesome Performance, and I'm coaching these little 12s, and they're 11, and I'm Coach Kane, and they're scared. And I've tried Botox; it doesn't fix the face. This is what this is what I'm working with.
This is the face.
This is it. It's not changing. My voice is very deep. I get it.
Yeah,
can't change that. I'm very animated, and I speak with my hands, and I'm intense. And put yourself in a gym, or in the little 12s example, we're in a convention center with 120 courts set up. I can't go, hey, can you move your feet past the ball? They'll be like, what? I'm like, come here, watch. And I'll say it and they can't hear it. And then I'll yell it and they go, okay, got it. I say, so am I yelling or am I coaching loudly so that you can hear me? Now, if you look from across the way, I look like I'm yelling and screaming all the time. And, but they have to trust. There's got to be this element of like, I love them. I love every kid I've coached, genuinely. I want them to be successful. I'm never going to hate you for making a mistake. Every point in volleyball is somebody's mistake. I had that conversation with the little kids yesterday. So you can't fear making mistakes. They're going to happen. The best kids in the planet make mistakes. No one's perfect. So we talk a little bit about that. You have to establish the trust that, because from the eye test, I look like I'm a lunatic.
Like you're a crazy person.
I'm aware. It's funny, speaking of Wade again, the Womack, the softball coach, he came up and, he was doing the clock or something, score table. He was working at the score table. And he said to me, man, I had no idea how much coaching you're doing. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, dude, from across the gym, you look crazy. I'm like, really? He goes, then I come up and I can hear what you're saying and you're telling them what the blocking elements are, where to I had no idea. I'm like, well, I look crazy. He goes, Michael, you look angry.
You need somebody to film you on the side.
I know it, but it's like I'm invested. So I was like, I can't turn that off.
Yeah.
And so, I'm hard in the sense that I'm not gonna sugarcoat. I'm not gonna say I blame you, but I'm certainly gonna say you're not doing that right.
That's coaching. You're coaching.
It is, but unfortunately these days, parents don't like kids to be held accountable.
I wanted to ask you.
I think that's a big problem.
For you, because you are so intense on the court, how do you protect your peace? Because you're a girls volleyball coach. You have drama, emotions, heartbreaks, parents, and school pressures and career pressures. But how do you yourself protect your peace as a male coach where you're having... There's so many things that go on in the news. Let me tell you, the fact that you are just remain in the school system should be praised. And what goes on in the environment,
for sure.
This is going to be released in a week. Just yesterday, we had another school shooting,
right?
And how do you, when you go to your house and you are in your protective little space? You're not Coach Kane anymore. You're Michael, right? You're a dad. You're a husband. You're a son. How do you protect your peace? Where do you go? Where do you go mentally to go find that? Golf? You said you'd like to golf. I love
golf. If I could spend more time playing golf, if they could give me a couple hours every day to go play golf, that would be great. I don't get to play near as much, but it is definitely a place that I love. For me, I like to work out and exercise. As something that's important to me. I do value the time with my family. I'm very fortunate. My brothers and my sisters, my parents, everybody lives within a stone's throw. So that's cool. Family is very, very important to me. I think everybody that knows me knows my love for my family and my kids. And but as far as like my peace, this is going to sound crazy. I mean, you have to learn to separate, right, and leave work at work. And that's something that a lot of people don't do. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not checking my emails sometimes and this, that, and the other. But I don't take any as an example. People talk about all the over 800 wins, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've lost a couple hundred games, right? Yeah. I mean, I could have 1,100 wins if I won them all. But when I lose, I don't come home angry about it. I've learned, and even though I wear it and I'll go back and watch film, but in the moment, I can lose a game, and not that it doesn't matter to me, but I can lose a game and then turn around and go hang out with my friends and go grab dinner and not be sad or upset.
So you're not looking at that as a failure. You're looking at that as an opportunity to improve because you made mistakes. Now you can identify the mistakes and fix those.
Well, one of the things I love about coaching is that every year comes with its own trials and tribulations and their own unique nuances that I've got to figure out. How can I get this to work? This year, as an example, we had 2 freshmen were new to high school. And imagine being a freshman and being thrown on this level of a team with, we've got kids playing in college now. All those, we have so many seniors that signed to play in college, and they're working with those kids, and that could be daunting. And so you got those nuances. You've got maybe a situation where you got a veteran group coming back, and how do you keep them focused? I have had teams before that have won a state championship, and how do you get them to go back to the state tournament? In 2013, as an example, we had a group that was fairly young. There was that class that was uber talented, was a group of sophomores, but they had a good mix of other kids that could help them. We get to the state Final Four, which is the first time in 20-something years or whatever from dripping. We get to the Final Four. Claire Gravel blows her knee out in an ACL. Kind of changed the dynamics of that Final Four. We sat down. It's like, how do you get those returners? Because we have the majority of that team coming back. That team dynamic is they're returning. How do you get them to be hungry again? Then we go to the state championship and lose to Lovejoy in 2014. And now a new group coming back. But how do we get, now a lot of those kids are now seniors. How do we get that group to come back? So
answer that question. That's the question. How do you get them to perform? So do you come up with like a season plan when you've identified the kids you've got to work with and you've maybe looked at the schedule? Do you come up with you write out a plan? How do you come up with the answer to that?
I think the schedule.
Meeny, miny, mo.
Yeah. Prayer. I have rosary beads that I use.
You just pull out of a bucket
for sure. Like,
answers. Yeah.
As far as the schedule's concerned, my schedule's been fairly close to the same the whole time I've been there. So a lot of people are saying this year as an example, how's it going to be like going to 6A? Like and that was the big buzzword, right? We're going to 6A. And I'm like, well, every preseason game for me is 6A. Like I play nothing but high level teams. I go to the arguably the 3 toughest tournaments in the state of Texas, have been since I got here. As much, and we've won them a couple times, but the majority of the time we're not winning those tournaments. But I know we lose. We're going to lose some games. Is what can we get from it? So from that standpoint, that is never negotiable. I don't believe if as many games as I've won. If I would have padded my schedule, I'd have 1,200 wins. It's not about the win, right? It's about the journey of like, what can I get this group of kids to do? I love that part of the challenge. As far as other things that I do, we do sit down and say, hey, here's where we are. This is what we need to do. I'll remind them constantly. We have tons of talks about, hey, this is where we should be. Or I'll hold them accountable. This year's team is an example. I don't mind. I'm not throwing them on the bus, but I felt like there was a dynamic that wasn't being performed to the degree that I thought was required to be successful. And so I held them accountable to it. So I pulled them in and said, you all are talking about winning a state championship or going to the state tournament, which in itself is a feat, right? But you're not doing A, B, and C, which based on my experience and everything that I know in coaching, you have 0% chance of going to do that if you're not willing to. We talked about sacrifice and stuff like that, or come in and do the little extra stuff, watching film or whatever, right? And it finally hit them probably midway through district. When we got a loss we had beat Westlake at Westlake, and then when they came into our place, we kind of came in with this little bit of, and that was the thing about this year's team. If we knew we were better than you, we wouldn't give you our best effort. Oof. It was like, we know, and we would win 98% of those games because they were so incredibly talented. We beat Westlake at Westlake and pretty handily. Even Miguel is a good friend of mine, and he called me up and goes, man, you guys, when you clicked, it was incredible. And then we play him at his place, and I knew we just weren't mentally there. And he's like, oh, dude, just take it easy. And I'm like, whatever, dude. And I'm trying to tell him, like, he's a good coach. He's not going to just come with the same game plan. Everybody's changing to figure out how they can beat you.
Accountability.
And then we lose at our place.
That was humbling.
It was humbling. Humbling. And the kids, but for the first time, I think the kids, especially the seniors, really rose to like we got this, coach. And then one of them was just kind of airing out the group, like, enough of this. This is ridiculous. Like, and I'm like, well, where have you been? Like, well, I've been trying to tell you all this
But
for
you
the
know
last
what?
3
Maybe
weeks.
that's what it took. It took for somebody to step up.
It was a defining moment. You know, I think there's, in life and in seasons, there are definitely defining moments, you know, and it doesn't mean that a loss can derail you. A good parallel example to the 2015 team that won it and the 2022 team that won it this year. We get to play a warm-up game. And in 2015, we were still 5A. And I looked up to find out who the number one team in the state in 6A was. It was Corpus Christi, not Corpus Christi. You got me saying South Lake Carroll.
South Lake Carroll.
Yeah. So I said, hey, let's meet in Waco and play. And he's like, absolutely. So they were number one in 6A. We were one in 5A. So we meet and we lose. And from that loss, I talked to the kids. I'm like, all right, well, this is the best of the best. If we want to win, we got to wake up and realize, not that they weren't, but just say, this is a reminder, right? That you have to click on all cylinders, because I didn't think we played great. Played good, but not great. And
So you played them. This was not like, this was just kind of
a warm up. You're allowed to have a warm up.
Okay.
Yeah. So to prepare yourself for the playoffs. And I felt like we needed a wake up, because we kind of steamrolled through that year in 15. We had really steamrolled a lot of teams that we played. And so we lose. Well, from that moment, we go on to win a state championship. South Lake loses in the third round.
Did you pick that team because there was a possibility that they could lose?
Absolutely.
And that would spur them to
I
raise
didn't
their
think
game?
we could. I thought we would win, but I thought as a team that if we didn't play perfectly, they would beat us. And they did. And I wasn't afraid to lose, because I knew what I was going to come out of that.
And you said they ended up losing
in the third round. They didn't make it to the state tournament. And they were the number one team. And so coincidentally, the parallel this year, we were not ranked in the top 15 or 10 at the end of the year and before we started the playoffs. But Highland Park was having a monumental year. They were the number one team in 6A all year long. They were just uber talented. And so I called Michael Dearman up and said, hey, let's meet in Waco and play. He's like, absolutely.
That's cool.
So we met. We actually had a cool moment. We exchanged film on each other, which is, coaches don't do that. But I said, here's some film on me. He gave me film on him. Scout us out. See what you think. And we're in the same division, so people would probably think we're crazy for doing this. But we wanted, and then we agreed that after the match, regardless of who wins, we would tell each other, well, this is the weaknesses that we saw, and we were trying to expose that. And so we play not great. We didn't play terrible. They were two really incredibly talented teams, and we lose again. And I reminded them of the 2015 team, blah, blah, blah. And Highland Park doesn't make it to the state tournament, and we wound up winning it.
Wow.
So
You really care about this game.
It's my life.
Well, and the thing I like about that, two competing coaches talking to each other, giving each other tips, that's about
to beat
raising
each other.
good kids, right?
Sure.
You're about the kids at,
Sure.
at the end of the day. I mean,
Right.
not only do you want them to win, but you want them to be the best that they can be.
Sure. And the reality is with this group, I mean, a blind monkey could come and coach them. I could step aside and.
No, I don't know about that. Coach.
Well, I'm saying and they would win the majority of their games.
Yeah.
Are they going to win a
I'm
state
a blind
championship?
monkey. I don't think
I bet you if you coached them, they would win more than they lost.
Yeah.
I'm not saying state championship, but they're just so talented that they're going to win. Now, for me, it's getting them to the next level, right? And that's part of what I'm trying to.
How'd you learn all this?
I don't know.
You didn't just pick it up by assimilation.
I woke up.
YouTube.
I think
No, really, seriously. Did you have a mentor? Did you go to school for it?
Well, obviously, we go to college, but I don't know that it's going to college to learn how to coach. I was hungry, we talked about going in high school, and I was at Bowie High School in 1989. Just showed my age. Sorry to disappoint. Kids trip out when they go, "You're 51." I'm like, yes. They're like, wow. Like,
We just don't age like normal generation.
It's a lot of the product
Gen
that I'm
X.
using. I'm
It's
using a
the
lot
Gen
of
X.
product.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure you are.
But as I mentioned before, my senior year, I finally decided, hey, I'm going to try to really be disciplined and really focus on my grades so that I could play high school athletics, which I had never done before. But I knew I could play. So all summer long, I played basketball with the boys that were going to be at Bowie. I get there. All the kids think I'm going to be the point guard for the basketball team. And we get there, and Stu Taylor's the coach and walks in and says, any seniors with no varsity experience? And I raise my hand, and I'm like, what do we got? He's like, you're cut. He never saw me dribble, never saw me shoot. I didn't even have a chance to put on gym shorts. It was like, wait, what? And he's like, I'm trying to build a program. And if you don't have something to contribute, meaning experience as a senior, I'm trying to build a program from the ground up.
You're like, how am I going to get experience if I don't get to
Yeah.
play?
So it was a kind of a defining moment, right?
Gut punch.
Yeah. And I went home to cry to my mom and dad, and they're like, no. That's not how that works. You don't get to not do stuff and then all of a sudden make a decision. Hey, today I'm going to turn the switch on and I'm going to be a good soldier or whatever. And then the world owes you anything. You have to work that. So I took that, learned from it, right? And decided that no matter what, I'm going to make sure that I outwork everybody, that I'm going to be willing to do whatever it takes to be successful. So when I came back from the military, as I mentioned before, I was in the military. I was in the fire department. I had a job lined up to be it's kind of these paths, right, that we take. I chose to forego the fire career path and decided I wanted to coach. I like sports. I was an athlete, and I wanted to be around it. So I started going to school to get serious about getting a degree to be a teacher and a coach. And in that, you have to take all these classes. So I took a volleyball class. And in the military, I was introduced to beach volleyball. So I kind of dabbled a little bit. And they go,
the Top Gun.
Yes. You say Top Gun. These kids don't even, thank God they just came out with the remix, because 5 years ago, I'd say Top Gun. They're like, what? I'm like, how do you not know Top Gun? They're like, Michael, that was 30 years ago. I'm like, was it really? And it was like 30 years ago. It's crazy. But I took a volleyball class, and I thought I was going to coach baseball because that was my passion. And the professor says, or the coach or whatever, she's a professor, she's like, hey, have you ever thought about coaching volleyball? We need more males in volleyball. I was like, I played a little bit, but I was not, elite level type stuff by any means, as my kids remind me daily. So I went to a club, and here in Austin, and I was an assistant, but then I stayed around and watched every single coach and listened to what they said and studied the game, right? Studied practices, watched more film and drills on film than you could imagine. And I finally received an opportunity to coach at St. Michael's, and I met probably the two people that are my mentors that I contribute a lot of my philosophical ideas from. David Cook was the women's basketball coach there, an amazing, just an uber intelligent man, and just the way he treated those kids and the way he looked at it as a family and a development. And he took ownership on their growth, not just on the court, because they were really, really talented on the court, but more about them as people. So I still a lot him, and we still talk to this day. And then the second was the baseball coach that was there, Calvin Schiraldi.
I know Calvin Schiraldi.
He wrote a book.
Great guy.
I don't know if you've seen it.
His wife and I, Deb, were friends. We went to Riverbend Church together.
Is his book about coaching?
His book about his life, and it's one of the most incredible books you will ever read. And if you're, and I know him personally, so I actually cried when I read it and called him and said, and to this day, we're very good friends. And I'm like, I had no idea what you were going. His story is incredible. So if you haven't read the book, I'll swing it. I got a copy of it. I'll bring it by. It's incredible. I went to his book signing not too long ago. He came out with, and David coincidentally helped him write the book. Wow. It's an incredible story, but so those two guys,
Schiraldi, baseball.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the funny part is I always told Calvin, and they made fun of me because I spoke at Calvin's retirement thing, and I was speaking, and I said, I'm saddened because, I think, and I was told by somebody one time, a long time ago, and I haven't done this yet, but that person told me that everybody should write a book. Everybody. Whether it be something,
Michelle, we got to write a book.
Whether it's about your life, whether about your something, and that doesn't mean you have to get it published, but just to write it.
I have a book in the works right now. Steve doesn't. It's all about things that Steve says.
There you go. Yeah. And it could be that, right? It could be something.
It's called Shit Steve Says.
Well, the funny part is Calvin. And the reason why I said Calvin should write a book, he won a state championship at Westlake. He won a college World Series national championship at Texas. He was the College World Series MVP on a roster that had Roger Clemens, and it was a pretty big feat. Wow. And then he pitched in the Major League in the World Series. It's like you have experienced the pinnacle of success in every level. And you talk about, and I thought I was competitive. We would go play golf, and this is a funny story about Calvin. Sorry, I know this is on a tangent, but we all like to play golf, and we go out, and of course there's gambling and money on the line and pride on the line. And I got partnered up with Calvin, and he's a very good golfer, as you can imagine. But we're competing against David and one of the other coaches, and we're doing such and such. And there's a putt that was really close. It was about a foot and a half out. And so he gets there and he's walking off, or we were competing against Calvin. He goes, hey, go ahead and pick it up. Like, it's good. Like, we're just going to say it's good, move on. But I walk up and because I want to get this extra practice in, and I putt the ball, and it misses. Oh. And Calvin turns around and wears me. I mean, we're grown men. And he's like, of course, he's using words I don't want to use on my, but like, he's like, if I ever tell you to pick it up, you pick it up. We've got money on the line. And if I'm like, oh, yep.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
you
Coach.
got it. So
that's your philosophy.
But those two guys were so pivotal in what I model a lot of what I do. You know, Calvin, again, I mean, one of the most humble human, you would never know that this guy has all the accolades and the career that he's had. He's mowing, on the baseball field, mowing the baseball field in sweatpants and you just wouldn't know,
That's cool.
And it was an incredible experience.
I haven't seen them in years, but they're
doing great.
I worked with them in the youth ministry in Riverbend, and just amazing people.
Well, I'll bring a book.
I would love that.
If you know them,
I would love
the
that.
The book will make you cry, I guarantee it, and you'll love it.
I'd like to read it when you're done.
It's incredible.
I have a very controversial question for you.
Love controversial questions.
And you can answer this or you can pass. I'm gonna give you the choice.
Okay.
How do we keep women in women's sports?
Great question. And I'm gonna plug my newest adventure on this. So I started up with my wife and one of my friends, a new platform called Texas Volleyball Insiders. There's nothing like it. It's obviously a subscription-based platform, so it's got monetary value for me personally, but that's not the intent. The intent was that for women's sports, and this is glaring in so many different examples, that we dismiss, and this is where I take it personal. My kids are athletes. These girls at Dripping Springs are tremendous. They're not just athletes. They are tremendous athletes.
Super athletes.
And I remember, I won't say the person. A person comes in, they were in the football, like not on the team, they're not on staff. They were just a person connected to football. So it wasn't a parent. So I don't want this to be like football coaches. But they came to watch a volleyball game. I guess football had a bye or whatever, and they would be working the games or something like that. And they came into the gym and they were watching us, and they go, "Holy Toledo." It wasn't the word.
Yeah. We get it.
They go, I had no idea how athletic these kids are. I'm like, what planet have you been on, man?
Yeah.
Where do you know that? And again, I'm going to brag a little bit, which I try not to do. But the volleyball program in Dripping Springs has been to the Final Four 6 times in the last 10 years.
Wow.
That going once to the Final Four, making the state tournament, is a dream. And again, I told you earlier, I was reminded by a lot of coaches. They're just like, we could only dream of even getting to here, and you won it for the 6th time. I'm like, I never thought about it like that. And we had a friend, a coach that retired, had over 800 wins, never made it to the regional finals.
Jeez, wow.
And here we are 6 times. And how much do we really, as a community, know how truthfully successful the volleyball program is,
or value that these young women's ability?
For sure. And I'm not throwing shade at the school or my administration. One of the reasons I stay, a lot of people say, why don't you go play coach college or leave? And I have great support. My administration supports me. That's one of the reasons I stay, and I have had opportunities to leave. But going back to what girls are dismissed, we just are. Again, we went to the state championship game, and I wish the community would really recognize that a little bit more. And I know that sounds like, look at me. It's not really. It's look at what's in your community, representing your school and at the highest level, and yet getting acknowledgement to the degree that I think they deserve. It had the football team as an example, and I'm not throwing shade at the football program or the coaches. I'm just saying, had we won a state championship in football, we would have painted the tower maroon and gold. It would have been there would have been a we would have had a parade down the street. We would have shut the city. I mean, it's just kind of that. So I created this platform because, and this isn't just Dripping Springs issue, by the way, it is across the board. You don't hear much. on television, as an example, what do you hear during the fall? It's all Friday Night Lights. The Friday Night Lights has zero to do with volleyball. It's all about football. It's all about football. It's all about boys and men's sports and blah, blah, blah. Over the last couple of years, I don't know if y'all recall the NCAA. We're going in the middle of March Madness and we're going into the Final Four right now. But I don't know if you recall, I think it was 2 years ago, there were some college female basketball players that were saying, we're at the regional tournament and look at our weight room. And they panned in on a target, like, dumbbell set that had 5s, 10s, 15s, and 20s. Like, that's what it was. And then they panned over to the boys. They had an entire wing. It's like Gold's Gym took the entire Gold's Gym and transplanted it into and they're like, this is equity. Like, where's the equity in what we do? So what we have to do as a society is recognize that girls are competing. We have, by the way, in Dripping Springs, we have one of the very best soccer players in the country on the women's side, who's now going to go play for the U.S.
U.S. team
under 19 team.
Really?
And he's going to Canada.
I didn't know that. That's sad.
Of course, nobody knows that.
Yeah.
And that's my point. We also this year in volleyball right now, she's a freshman, and this isn't about her. We have to have a whole team. So this isn't glorifying that. My point is to the extreme in our own community. A freshman, Henley Henderson, she is ranked the number 1 player in the country in her class. And we should be, I'm not saying our schools, I'm not saying the school, this is not about the school. I'm talking about in general. Girls are not treated equitably. I created this platform, Texas Volleyball Insiders, to bring attention to it. We're trying to write stories. I do podcasting myself to talk about the sport, not just in Dripping Springs, because I try to not to, it's an open deal we do. We are trying to draw somewhere where people can learn about all the volleyball that's going on in Texas. And even that is getting a slow roll, get going. We're moving in the right direction, which is great. But it's like, if I'm a business, if I'm a bank or I'm whatever, I would want to, like, I'm trying to get people to sponsor it.
Yeah.
If it was football, we'd sponsor this immediately.
In a heartbeat. Yeah.
And so we have to, if we want to address that as a state and nation, quite honestly, and most people, and I hate when people say this, and I know there's some financial truth to this. I'm not ignorant to business, right? But what most people's response is, well, nobody cares because they don't bring in money. Mm-hmm. Football brings in money. But it just doesn't make, I don't know what the answers are. If I knew them, I would implement them, right?
I think it's just continuing to do what you're doing. I watch a lot of cycling, stream a lot of cycling stuff, and women's cycling, nobody paid any attention to it for years. The last couple of years, these streaming services have put women's bike races on. It's super exciting. It's different than the men's racing, but it's super exciting. I love watching it. And if companies continue to do that and promote women's sports, then the money will come. The money, it's sort of the chicken or the egg, right?
Well, and then also, and this is a Michelle opinion. Okay, I'm just going to state it, but I think also protecting the fact that we are keeping biological women in biological women's sports and keeping biological males out of women's sports. And when I'm talking about protecting and promoting women's sports, that's what I'm talking about. And I think it's ridiculous that a biological male is able to compete with biological women. And I think it's an unfair playing field. Men are built differently than women. And this is
Coach, do you think that pendulum has started to swing back the other way?
Like that we starting to recognize women?
Not recognize women, but recognize that when a biological male competes in women's sports, that is not a level playing field.
I mean, it's a very controversial topic, obviously, because again, you have to be, and we should be sensitive to,
of course,
people's person. Meaning, if I'm going through a transition phase, or if this is how I identify as, and whatever. So there's a sensitive component to that. But to your point, there are some biological advantages to being a male, and I don't know that anybody can dispute that. I don't know what the real answers are to it, and but fair and equitable. I mean, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to just to know that a guy is going to be able to do things that a female can't do,
especially in certain sports.
In certain sports,
yeah, like swimming right now. I think a male has 25 or 30% more upper body strength than a than a female. And so
I read,
you know,
I saw
a lot of upper body.
I saw a documentary the other day that I thought was interesting. They were talking about tennis, and there was a time where, again, Venus Williams and Serena Williams, they were deeming them like the greatest tennis player ever. It was an interesting documentary because they were really slamming John McEnroe, who's one of the greats of tennis. Yeah. And he said the greatest female tennis player ever. And they go, wait, what? What did you just say? He goes, well, she's not the greatest tennis player ever. She's the greatest female tennis player ever. And they go, how dare you say that, John? Yeah. And John goes, well, first off, if we're defining greatest, the greatest player to play the game is not a female. As a matter of fact, Serena Williams couldn't beat the 250th player in the world in men's side of the circuit. So then it became this. So then this was challenged, and they wound up getting beat by like the 200th player. I mean,
they played the game
6-0, 6-1.
Oh my gosh!
And it was like he was like, and she was even interviewed after. She goes, yeah, the game's different. I mean,
it's a Billie Jean King scenario.
And there was another, I don't remember if it was her, because there was another professional tennis player, female, that said the same thing, was like, it's not the same level. To your point, the speed of the serves is 20 miles an hour. I don't even know the right number, so I'm sorry for any tennis people out there, but it's a substantially different. The game in men's is substantially more about serving, because the serve is so fast.
But women's tennis is just as exciting as men's tennis.
It doesn't,
if not more.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. We have to understand, are they the same? No. Is the excitement the same? I mean, I would almost tell you that I like all sports. I would think women's tennis is actually more enjoyable to watch than guys' tennis, because there's more volleying that's really genuinely going on.
That's true.
But that's just my silly perspective to it. But the ladies, the women in this day and age, and as far as like, I'll use my life and dripping as an example. When the top of the net, for people that don't know, is 7 feet 4 inches for the women. It's 8 feet for the guys.
Oh,
but it's 7'4" for girls. College, high school, doesn't matter. Olympics, 7'4". It's the same across the board for women. And when I first started coaching 25 years ago, I thought, man, if I could get girls to touch 9 feet. And so I was working so hard to get the girls to touch 9 feet. I'm like, yeah, you're about 1.5 feet over the net. You can hit and do all the things you need to hit a ball over the net. And I remember like being very prideful of like how many kids I had touching over 9 feet. And if you were touching 9.5, oh my God, like you were a megastar. And I think one of the best players in the country at the time that played for me was touching like 9.6. Okay. We have kids on this year's 2022 team. And even coming back, I'll have 3 kids that are touching over 10 feet.
Oh my gosh!
And
they're drinking milk.
Yeah, and they're touching 10.2. Henley, the freshman in reference, is touching 10.5.
Wow!
So the game in 20 years has changed by a foot.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's incredible for high school. But you go to college, and there was a girl in Florida, University of Florida, that was touching 11 feet.
Oh my gosh!
Can you imagine?
That's insane. That's NBA players.
I mean, it's obscene. But we just have to recognize and do a better job of promoting businesses. To your comment before earlier, and by the way, if you're a business and you want to support a women's platform, hit me up reach out to Coach, and you can support Texas Volleyball Insiders. But we just don't put our money where our mouth is. We say we want to do this, and we don't want to support it genuinely. Yeah,
Coach, I could do this all day with you. I'm learning so much from you, and we may have to have you back on another time. But
I appreciate
this has been really great. So we thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm humbled. I don't know that I'm that exciting, but I am. Certainly,
this is good stuff.
I'm certainly prideful of the school. I love Dripping Springs High School. It's like I said, I've had an opportunity to leave, and I don't ever want to see myself being here long term.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's a great community.
And you're just blessed to be blessed.
I am blessed. The kids make fun of me, but I'm blessed.
They make fun of you about anything.
No, I mean, you really do. You have the moments that you go through, and had a pretty personal moment that went through, and I realized I'm lucky every day. I get to show up, and I'm here, and so
we're blessed to have you on the show, Coach.
Well,
Dripping Springs is very lucky to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Coach.
Thank you for having me.
This show has been brought to you in part by the real estate pros at the Mallett Integrity Team. When you're looking to buy or sell, you need them on your side. Why settle for less when you can have real estate done right? Give them a call at 512-829-2062 or get more info at mallettintegrityteam.com.
You know you like us, so go now to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave us a review. Why don't ya? We love your feedback and comments. Email us at mallettandmichelle@gmail.com.
Thanks for putting up with us.